Welcome, everybody, to Millennials Are Killing Capitalism. We're also streaming this today on Resistance is Fertile on X and on Substack, I believe. And so, Benji, great to have you. We're here to talk with you about, the psychology of resistance and how to fight psychological warfare, and also to fight back in our own way against your ban from YouTube. And so, hopefully we don't get banned for fighting back against your ban. But yeah, it's good to be with you, my friend.
Yeah, good to be with you too. Somehow I'm getting double sound. I need to check that. How can I?
Oh, it's probably you probably have a tab open that also has it streaming.
Trying to get that off.
Good to see everybody in the chat this morning. Make sure to take a second and, like the stream wherever you're watching it. And also, subscribe to the channel. Also, just want to tell folks, because Resistance is Fertile is not on YouTube currently, there's two things you can do. One, there's a petition in the chat that you can sign, and we'd greatly appreciate that, and I'm sure Benji would as well. And then in addition to that, you can follow their work on Substack, which is where this is currently streaming and where they're hosting all of their shows. They're on other platforms as well, but that's the one I think that is kind of the most central hub for the work that they're doing at Resistance is Fertile right now. So yeah, I mean, Benji, do you want to say anything more about all of that up front?
Yeah, sure. So I'll say a few words about the ban, of course. Well, thank you very much, Jay, for your solidarity. This ban is kind of weird, strangely. I don't think it has anything to do with Palestine content, and I think it has to do very weirdly with Keir Starmer, who is currently the Prime Minister of Britain and one of the most right-wing and, paving the way for this new form of liberal fascism that is spreading all over the imperial core at the moment and genociding, all over the global majority. And basically what it was is, when I was a student at Oxford between 84 and 87, I actually went to Oxford as a young revolutionary. I was part of a very small group that was led by someone who came out of the Fourth International, was the leader of the Fourth International right after the Second World War, and had gone full for national liberation movement, especially for supporting the Algerian national liberation movement, to the point of providing material support, going all the way to building a small arms factory across the Moroccan border to arm the resistance in Algeria. And that kind of got him expelled from the Fourth International, who wasn't that keen on being materially supportive. And so this man, known as Michel Raptis, or Pablo as his name was, made many, many links over the years with all these revolutionary armed resistance movements, especially in West Asia. So he had links with the DFLP, he had friendly connections with Gaddafi. Some people said our group was somehow financed by Gaddafi. I never had proof of this, but I never had proof that it wasn't, in a way. And when I got to Oxford, and I was pro-Palestine, I visited Beirut in 81 as a result of those connections, where I visited lots of PLO people, including meeting briefly with Yasser Arafat and Farouk Kaddoumi, who was a very close friend of the person who took me there. And so I was already a committed anti-imperialist, if you like. And when I got to Oxford, one of my ideas was to start a small group around our international group and start a magazine. And I did so. I got involved in the Labour Party, in the Labour Club. And very quickly, I recruited to my project one Keir Starmer, who before that, the first time I met him, he was selling the Militant newspaper outside our Labour Club meetings. And the Militant newspaper was a Trotskyite newspaper of people who were at the time being witch hunted, as we used to say, out of the Labour Party. And what was really strange is Keir Starmer came over to our side, which was very different because we were like into ecological struggles, feminism, gay rights. There was this idea that we could maybe do an alliance with the working class in what we call then the new social movements. And that was an analysis that our leader, if you like, had been at the forefront of since the early 60s, and ecologists since the early 70s. And militant were like the most, traditional, we used to call workerist Trotskyite group. And this guy came over to our side without any debate. So I don't know if you're very familiar with Trotskyite law, but Trotskyites are able to debate for months on the smallest divergence of anything, like, the nature of the Soviet Union or this kind of, or the class nature of national liberation movements, whatever. And this guy never argued anything and came immediately and was never really interested in political discussions, but more into somehow, I don't know if it was helping with the practical side of it, but of things, but knowing about the practical side of things. He actually went all the way to attend one of our international conference with Pablo and all our, international comrades in 1989, I believe. And so, yeah, and since then, we've learned a lot about how the British deep state infiltrated and probably infiltrates still every single organization. I'm not even going to say left wing because it was all the way down to animal rights and everything. The minute you had two people organizing together to fight against something of the British state, you had at least one cop in there. And this is what, the spy cops scandal has been revealing over the past decades and keeps on revealing. So, and I always thought, okay, so there was a cop in a very small group. Who was it? And the more I see Keir Starmer doing what he's doing, the more it's hard for me to get my memories of him out of my mind. And also we shared a house in London for 1 year after Oxford. And it was with his, childhood friends, and none of them were interested in the slightest in politics. So it was all weird anyway. And so over the years, I've been asked by some mainstream journalists to talk about it, and I always refused out of, I don't know, revolutionary loyalty to our past or something. And after he became prime minister, this left-wing journalist who has the channel, the Crispin Flintoff Show, eventually contacted me, and I said, okay, I'll speak now. And we did an interview, we recorded the interview, and he put out a teaser and then a very small personal channel I'd had on which I had a conference about my time with Keir Starmer. And as part of this, small Pabloite, as was known organization. And the next thing I knew, that channel had been shut down. And like the way, without any warnings, without anything, there was a bit of content about Palestine, but really milquetoast stuff that I put out in between November 23 and February 24. I was still at the time trying to appeal to my liberal colleagues, not realizing this was actually a liberal genocide. And you can't talk them out of something that is them, right? And yeah. And so it said repeated, hate speech, no warning, no content pointed. Then the channel had 279 subscribers. It was like almost, not something I was really working on. It's AI appeal. So you write an appeal, 2 minutes later, it comes back saying, we have considered long and hard and in great detail, but blah, blah, blah. Must be, and nothing more. I appealed on the Twitter thing, and I got the same kind of repeating of this AI response. I tried to open another channel. They closed it down for, breaching of their circumvention policy. Now I have an allergy to advertising, so I buy the premium thing so that me and my son can watch videos without watching advertising, which drives me crazy. So I had these 2 premium subscriptions on my old channel and on the new one. And suddenly I realized they were still charging for the premium subscription, and you when your channel is terminated, you can't unsub. It's really weird. You can't unsub. So it took me a long time to find a way to finally speak to somebody and tell them to stop the subscription. It took like about 3 to 4 hours to do the two. And the next day, they closed the Resistance is Fertile channel, which I think is, it says something about Google that they would deny you a service and still, grab those $25 for the family subscription a month, even though they've denied it to you, and not have a way for you to undo the subscription. I mean, it says something about the avaricious nature of this particular phase of, capitalist imperialism, that they will even try to get money out of the people they deny service to. So that's how it happened. I wish I could say it was the great content we put out on Palestine, on Resistance is Fertile, and they couldn't abide our truthful voice and our supporting the resistance psychologically, which I hope we'll be talking about soon. But I don't think it's what it is. I think it's like somebody in Keir Starmer's circle probably saw the video, because they keep an eye on this guy who's very connected to the Corbyn project and whatever. And they just, maybe panicked. And so I had a conference about him also, and just went to YouTube. That to me is the most plausible explanation, because, Resistance is Fertile was much more forthwith in what we were saying and never got troubled for content. We had one small warning for a short I put out where I was talking about children in Gaza, and I said, they know who fights for them. And so they said, this is, I don't know what, supporting proscribed organization. Again, I appealed, but it wasn't even a strike. First they give you a warning, and if they don't give you another one in 3 months, then it goes out. So yeah, that's the story of the ban.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. So they didn't do anything to the channel that actually interviewed you for it, right? Though.
Oh no, of course not. No.
Yeah.
And I think there is something peculiar to YouTube. Again, I think the profit motive is number one. Like, big channels, I know EI, Electronic Intifada, has had trouble. And when they've appealed, because they're a big channel, you get to speak to a real human, right? And then they have to balance what they gain from having the channel on to what they lose by banning them. So like large channels like EI, like Rachel Blevin's also channel was banned for a while. If you make a public noise, you can get it back. And I think also, their calculation is, okay, we make money out of it. I mean, if they're as avaricious as trying to get $25 out of the small Friday ban, that must be, and it's baked in, because otherwise, you'd have a button to go, okay, unsubscribe me now that you've banned me. That must be part of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The piece about keeping you subscribed and getting your money actually is sort of, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I remember years and years ago where I had a Verizon Fios like subscription, and they have a thing of like, if you have a contract for a certain number of years, right? And so I was like, oh crap, like I'm gonna have to pay out this contract because we were moving, right? And I looked on their website and everything and said, oh well, if you're moving to a place that doesn't have Verizon Fios, then your contract, is void basically, and all you have to do is return the device, right? So like I talked to somebody, got verification of that from Verizon, went and returned the device, and it took 6 years to get them to stop trying to collect like $500 from me that I didn't owe, and I spoke to people. I was cursed out by a customer service representative who called me a liar and all of this, and I basically just said, fuck y'all, you can do whatever you want to my credit report. You're never getting a penny from me. And eventually, this will not be, it'll time out basically. And, it won't be on my credit report after a certain number of time. And that's what happened. But, Yeah, I mean, these companies are ruthless in terms of just trying to collect every penny from people,
Mhm.
and especially with you not being monetized yet, like the money that they were getting from you was really just from your premium subscriptions. They weren't running ads on your page yet or anything like
Right.
that, you know. So,
Right. And we
um,
refused to be monetized. I mean, because we were inspired to start this by the acceleration of the genocide in Palestine. And one thing that Sasha and I committed to early on was to not make a single penny out of genocide. Like we were not going to make money out of this because this is what got us to start speaking. So we would have refused monetization anyway.
yeah, no, I understand that position. On that note, though, what we should do is one of the things we wanted to do today is to highlight some Palestinian survival campaigns. And I think before we do this, I'd just like to say a few words about this right now, and I'm sure you have some thoughts on it as well. I mean, people in Gaza are still in a situation where often they even have to pay for like land rent. Like that might
Mhm.
sound totally, I mean, it does sound totally insane, right? It's so
For the
wild that that
tents.
would be the case for the tents, right?
Yeah.
Just to have a space to put their tents on. So you have people who don't even have that. And then you have some people who do have a tent, but are trying to get into housing, right? Which there are still housing is still housing in Gaza, but the rent is more expensive, obviously,
Mhm.
and made more expensive by the genocide and the total destruction of so many of the houses and apartment buildings and everything like that within Gaza. There also has not been an adequate amount of aid that has gotten in during this,
Of course
so-called
not.
ceasefire
Yeah.
that is constantly violated every day, right?
Mhm.
Um, by the Israelis, we should say, by the West. Um, and so people have a lot of needs still, but I think that part of what happened is that with the ceasefire, people got very, they took their kind of they let up a little bit
They did.
psychologically,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I wanted you to talk about this a little bit because we're going to be talking about
Yeah.
resisting psychological warfare and this sort of thing. And I think that we could talk about this as an element of psychological warfare in terms of our solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, the way I look at it is this is a people's war, right? The resistance in Gaza is the people's army. So we need to think about it in terms of people's war, guerrilla war, anti-colonial war. And, we know from Mao that the guerrilla needs to move amongst the people like a fish in water. And they know this. This is also in all their COINTELPRO manuals, or in all the counterinsurgency manuals. So they're trying to basically cut the water off, like literally, but also more broadly, right? So this is where cutting the aid comes from. And this is where those of us in the West who want to materially help the resistance in Gaza, we can do this by materially helping people on the ground. And that, of course, means independently of the NGO industrial military complex, which is part of empire and the empire's political economy of genocide and of waste, right? And so there's, of course, the beautiful Samia project. There is the Hussein project also, and there is this great initiative called Lifeline for Gaza, which the idea is so beautiful. It's to bring together all those Gaza fundraisers that have been verified very often through word of mouth, right? Oh, I know somebody in Gaza who knows this person, and to rank them according to when they last got cash. So those of us who want to materially support resistance, in the West, we can't very well build a weapons factory across the border. Let me put it that way. But we can send cash, and we can do it through Lifeline for Gaza, making sure that those who got least or latest get some money. And also some of us, I don't know if you're one of us, one of those, but Sina is one. I know Louis Alde also. And I eventually, my problem is saying no, I think. So I eventually said yes to 4 small fundraisers in Gaza. So I have 4 that, I always think not very effectively, but I've fundraised for. And I know the people, who the money goes to. I've seen some on video, and it's part of what we can do, even if those people, most likely have absolutely no connection to the actual resistance. By keeping the people alive, you keep the water clean and nourishing for the resistance. So I think we have to think beyond, charity is bad, which used to be, my old also Marxist framework. We don't want to, charity is just a way to put a Band-Aid on the problems of capitalism. But in that context, in which there is, an imperialist accelerating genocide and campaign of extermination in Gaza, we can help through those fundraisers. And this is why, Jared, I both admire and I'm inspired by the fact that you bring those fundraisers as often as you possibly can, and also today. So thank you for what you do, because every single penny that you can put to Gaza helps. Even if it's just $1, it gives, it nourishes Sumud, it nourishes the spirit of resistance in the people, because it's that $1 says, you're not alone. You are not, you are not isolated. There are those of us out there in the world who are there for you in whatever way we're able to be.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, I always feel like I could be doing more, and I intend to continue to do what I can. Send me in the private chat too, if you can, links to the fundraisers that you fundraise to. I'll make sure that we highlight them today. I mean, one thing about, so a couple things from what you said. One, I think about some of our earliest conversations with Abdul Jawad Omar after October 7th, and him talking about war being a battle of wills, right,
Yeah.
among peoples, essentially, right? And so part of what you're talking about as well, right, is this idea that, look, if the whole people of Gaza cannot move forward, right, then resistance doesn't have any base of support as well either, right?
Yeah.
And and so yeah, I think it's really it is connected, as you say. And one thing I just want to say about Lifeline for Gaza, again, let me pull that back up for folks, is, I mean, you will notice, of course, as you look through it, that, there are many more funds. Basically what all red means is that there's been uh, no funding for the last 5 days. And there are way more funds in that category than there were when we did, a thing for them a couple months ago. But one thing I wanted to note is that they also now put the date of the last donation for these. I mean, there's one here that hasn't been donated to since May.
Wow.
Another one since the end of September. And then those were probably recently added because they're constantly adding folks after
Yeah.
they do what you're talking about, their peer-to-peer confirmation to make sure that people actually live in Gaza. But here you have, several that are from, the middle or early October, right? And I think, those ones have probably been up there for quite some time and not received, any support either. And so, yeah, I just encourage people, I'll do the same thing during this. I'll pick out, 4 or 5 and give a
Oh, yeah. Me too.
small contribution, and I think if everybody does that, like you said, it doesn't have to be a huge donation. I know for a lot of people, there's a lot of financial stress just on everybody right now. And, so I definitely understand and respect that. And as somebody who, unfortunately, my living is tied to podcasting at this point, like, I'm
Yeah.
always asking people for money too. And so, like, there's the the contradiction you talked about, like I live it, you know, and it's I don't love it. But
Yeah.
but on the flip side, like I think it is really just very important that um you know, you not let Palestinians just fall into this space of hopelessness and despair and feeling like the whole world also has abandoned them or moved on, right? And I think that that's the thing, is like just stay connected. It's also always an opportunity. They have on that site the social media connection of most of the Palestinians that are on Lifeline for Gaza. And so you can also, you know, follow them, retweet them, direct message them, build a connection. And I'll say this too, as somebody who's connected with a number of people in Gaza, like they don't want a lot from you, right? They just want you to maybe share their fundraisers on a recurring basis, to um you know, and if support if you can, but they also understand that not everybody can give, right? And so you know, and beyond that, it's when you do connect and talk with them about how they're doing and what's going on, a lot of times I just hear from them like gratefulness that anybody even
Yeah.
cares and is kind of asking those questions, because they feel often on social media like they're doing so much work to try to get anyone's attention at all. And that is very psychologically debilitating too, to feel
Of
like
course.
you're
Yeah.
screaming into a void and nobody cares, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
And yeah, and oh god, I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, Lifeline for Gaza. They've just been deactivated on Twitter. Their account has been deactivated on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, you know, go and tell them to reactivate, because we know that is effective. And you know, I think it's no accident that they target these initiatives, right? So they will shut down Lifeline for Gaza. They will the Zionist terror gangs will actually pick off the main activists of Samir project directly, their family, because they know that this is actual material support. So we need to realize that when they target something or someone, it means that this is something of importance to them. They don't, you know, they don't do this randomly. And so we know Lifeline for Gaza is really effective, if only because Elon Musk just banned it from Twitter, hopefully, you know, temporarily. We also know Samir Project is very effective because they're literally being picked off by the Zionist terror gangs, one after the other. So that's how you know we are materially helping. And material help to me is essential. You can't be a revolutionary if you just, you know, mouth off on social media and make money out of it. And I understand that, you know, people like yourself, of course, you've made a choice to try and make a living being a revolutionary journalist. Well, you're not, no, who are you? To me, you're a political educator and really one of the best in the business. You know, you bring so much content to people, so many perspectives. You're also really great bringing the best out of your interviewees. And so you fulfill this really essential role for a movement of political education. And, you know, life being what it is, I understand that you need to be compensated for it. And at the same time, as you say, it becomes kind of, okay, and this is another way, by the way, to judge content creators, in my view. Content creators who refuse to take the time to verify that there are some materially significant ways to help, and to refuse to amplify, refuse to publicize. You know, Caitlin Johnson, is one of those, I think, are telling you something about what they're really about. Because, you know, the audience of many of those people has exploded since the genocide has accelerated. And it's just, to me, gruesome that we would make money out of genocide and not, you know, as you do, as many other content creators do, acknowledge that in a sense by going, hey, please, give material support to the people on the ground. So kudos to you for doing this, Jay.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate the compliments, and I mean, it's. I will say this: like, I was a professional podcaster, whatever that means, long before this genocide, right? And so, in some ways, that particular contradiction has just been heightened and felt very stark during it. And so, probably the degree to which I have done the work around fundraisers and stuff like that is just me understanding that that there is something particularly gross going on among certain people, where people do. I mean, it's also just, I think, the right thing to do. Basically, at a fundamental level, is like, this is a way to support people that are resisting genocide, right? They are, and so yeah.
And so one last thing, and then we'll move more to the psychological side of things. And before that, we have our friend in Gaza, Mohammed, who's been doing come on a few of our shows and doing a few reports when he couldn't come on the show. He's going to try and come live and give us a report from Gaza City. So looking forward to that, and I hope it works. He's not sure about the connection. But one thing that this ban has brought to my attention, I thought about it before, but I think it might be an idea, and I'm not sure how we can, pull this together, but it might be an idea for those of us who provide, clear anti-imperialist content, who see that the main contradiction today is between this, genocidal capitalist imperialist system and whomsoever resists it in any kind of way, right? Whether, without even judging those ways to start with. Those of us who see this, I call the anti-imperialist left writ large, I think it might be an idea to start building some kind of a defense organization, because otherwise we're in danger of being picked off one by one, and also in danger of sinking into those very individualistic dynamics that are promoted by social media, by content creation, by follower count, by all this, by subscription income, by all this kind of thing. And if as always, if we stand together, we're going to be stronger. Otherwise, there's a good chance that we're going to be picked off one after the other if we don't do something together. But that's just a general idea, and I don't know what you think about that, but it feels to me that the time is right for starting to move in this general direction.
I agree. Yeah, no, I do. I think I've been trying to think for a while now about how do we get more organized with our media work. And I mean, I think there are different challenges that come with it because of, like you said, like kind of the content creation, the industries really around it, right? Like, I am an employee of Google, like in many ways, right? I mean,
This is
not,
who you have to answer to at the end of the day.
I'm a contractor, right? Like I'm a contractor to them, and they can void my contract at any time, basically, right? And I mean, as I think your experience shows, this is not the end of the world. Like, there are other outlets, and there's work that has to be done to um, you know, to help people see where the people have been banned and fight the bans, and then to also, help direct people to new places that they can find your work and so on. But it is a disruption. Certainly, they could try to come after all of your, places that you're disseminating content if they're committed to it, right? And so on. And so it is, I think, something that requires more organized defense. And I also think within it, there's a lot of work within the field that could benefit from having some centralization to supporting multiple, multiple creators, right? Doesn't have to just support, an individual, right? And so, yeah, I think that I'm interested in exploring that with you and others for sure.
Yeah, I think that the time has come, and it's a very timely discussion. And especially as you said, you probably started thinking about it before all this happened, because it's been going on in the background for quite a while. Excellent. I'm trying to, I've just told Mohammed to come and join us. Hopefully he will. And yeah, one thing I've loved about your content was these long conversations you've been having with Lara Shihai. And psychology of resistance is what really gets me going. Like, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been thinking about it so much, this past 2 years, very intensely, but even before that. So I was a young revolutionary. I wanted to be, I don't know, a revolutionary journalist or something. I went to study at Oxford. I had the opportunity to do it. I was pushed by this lady who kind of believed in me. I saw exactly what it was. And then I think I got, well, I had all sorts of difficulties also due to my autism that I didn't know, wasn't aware of at the time, but that made it difficult for me to do like organizing, negotiate all the little social subtleties of organizing was never my forte, but I was more like thinking about ideas and exploring Marxism and stuff. But long story short, yeah.
One second, Benji's Mohammed is here, and so I wondered if you want to
No,
introduce him.
Aviman. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Hello, Mohammed.
Hey, Mohammed. Thank you so much for being on. Can you hear?
Hi.
Great. So I already talked about you, how we were privileged to have you a couple of times on our show and have some field reports from you. And now you're back in Gaza City and able, we hope, to live stream. And so Jay was kind enough to invite you. Wow. And the floor is yours now, Mohammed. Go ahead. Tell us how it's going.
So can you hear me? Can you hear me like clearly?
Yes. Yeah, very clearly.
Yeah. I did not catch the last thing you said.
We're waiting for you to say whatever you want to say about what it's like for you now in Gaza City.
Yes. So this ceasefire, which has, now I can see you, but I can't see Jared. So this ceasefire, which went into effect a few weeks ago, so it's seemingly holding until now.
The internet connection is not holding as well.
Yep, we can hear you. I think you're back
Oh,
now.
can you see me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So as I was saying, so this ceasefire went into effect a few weeks ago. Israel is violating this ceasefire every day. They have killed like hundreds of Palestinians. They're restricting the aid. When this ceasefire,
Mohammed, I'm going to suggest something. Hang on a second. Wait till he comes back. But I think if we shut off video for a second,
that could help.
Then it might help. Let's see. He's frozen at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe
And he's
he
gone.
logged out.
Okay.
Yeah, so he may log back in, and if he
Okay.
does, we can try it maybe without our images for a bit and see if we can just get the audio
Yeah,
through.
I just told him we would try without the video feed. So hopefully that will help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's going on in Gaza, and hopefully we can hear more. I hope, seeing Mohammed inspires our viewers to, of course, go to Lifeline for Gaza, or if you send the links to my small fundraisers, go ahead. But to be fair, it breaks my heart to have to say this, but go to Lifeline for Gaza first, because somehow my fundraisers have had some money lately. I don't know, some of them. And also, we've made a commitment that everybody who is a paid subscriber to our Substack, Resistance is Fertile, we give the money to Gaza plus 50%, because both Sasha and I are fully paid up members of the petty bourgeoisie. So we're, clinical psychologists, and we make a comfortable living out of that. So that allows us to give more money to Gaza, if you like. So don't, go to Lifeline for Gaza in priority, I would say. And I'm trying to keep, to be aware of those dynamics. Maybe turn this video off.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Okay.
Mohammed, I think we will try to turn our videos off too, Benji, so that hopefully that just reduces the bandwidth overall. So, Mohammed, go ahead and try to continue telling the story, and we're going to turn our videos off. Go ahead, Mohammed. Can you go?
No, that's not working.
Yeah, it's not working.
Well, let's keep him on and see if he speaks, and then I'll just stop yapping when he does speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think those dynamics psychologically are really, they're quite something. Like it's almost, you feel like you're reduced to beg, and of course, first the people in Gaza are reduced to begging, which is an attack on their fundamental human dignity. And I find myself doing a little bit the same on social media, begging, and then I find myself going, am I going to beg only for the my four fundraisers? And there's something in me that stops me from doing this. Even now, I would like some money to go to the fundraisers, but I think it's more important to give to those Lifeline for Gaza fundraisers that haven't received money in a long time. When my fundraisers have received money recently, because we actually just paid out the money we got from our paid subscribers. So, but you can, yeah.
Yeah. One thing I would say too is those, and I said this the last time we did something for Lifeline for Gaza, but those fundraisers that haven't received funding in weeks, right? Like what I would say to people, if you give to one of those, just make sure to continue to like at least share that fundraiser with people. Say, hey, this is a fundraiser that's been significantly neglected, and I've given into it, and I'm encouraging others to do so. And you can do it. Like Sina had a really good discussion, and I have some other friends who like you are, have adopted campaigns and are doing the transfers in that piece. And they hit up their family members, and I've hit up my family members for some of your project or for Lifeline for Gaza donations too. And you have a lot of people that don't are not going to be watching Millennials Are Killing Capitalism or like following some of these conversations, but still they would give something, right? Especially if you're doing it, right? Of like, hey, I'm doing this is a family we're helping, like and even that even works among some liberals. I mean, like because to them and this is a contradiction, but like to them it's like, oh well, one person that we're helping, like yeah, that again, it does feed into like you said, kind of a charity logic that we might want to resist, but that doesn't mean that we have to adopt it and always move or be doing it out of a charity logic, right? It's just that it's a way to get more people to help with providing material support to these families. And so I think that it's fine to lean into those kinds of contradictions in order to help on things like this. And I encourage people to do so. Yeah.
I'm just seeing a comment by Violin saying that on a Substack she's promoting Doctors Against Genocide, and we also have the link to Doctors Against Genocide on every one of our videos. And at the same time, when I think about it politically, I think the priority today is to nourish the resistance in Gaza, getting the money directly to people trying to basically survive extermination in Gaza. So I've personally stopped giving out to any organization other than, to Gaza at this moment, to actual folks in Gaza. So to me, it's either Samia Project, Hussein Project, or small fundraisers, Lifeline for Gaza. That's the way I go about it, because of the analysis I offered earlier. I think this is where you make the most difference, rather than funding organizations in the West that do great work, no question. But at this moment, I'd say, water directly, nourish, feed the resistance on the ground. But that's my way of looking at it anyway. I don't. But it's great, whatever you give to great organizations, keep on doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Benji, why don't we get into a little bit of your discussion about how to resist psychological warfare? And if Mohammed is able to join us, we'll try to get him in.
He's not. I asked him to maybe write his report if he wants to, and then I'll read it out loud, because clearly, the internet is very difficult there.
Even if he could record a short video or something like that, we could also play it. But I know that might take too long for him to upload it or something. But
okay, I'll tell him. So if it's okay, I'll go back a little bit to my story, because it's kind of material. So I started getting politically active just when the flood of neoliberalism and before the end of the Soviet Union or whatever came crashing on most of us, and plus my personal difficulties with my unrecognized autism. And so I dropped out of politics, and eventually I faced a choice at one point in whether going back to university to continue studying philosophy, Marxism and stuff, or being more directly useful and also kind of understanding my difficulties by going into clinical psychology, which is what I did. And I'm very happy I did that. And I came across an approach that over the years, I have been really researching and understanding the theory underlying it. And it's an approach that's based in the behavioral tradition, but not behaviorism as you knew it, like, conditioning rats or whatever. And it's evolved to the point where I believe it provides the missing link to a materialist, dialectical materialist account of psychology, which is not in Marx. Obviously, he was writing in the mid-19th century, where psychology hadn't even evolved out of philosophy as a discipline, right? And there is the piece missing in there. And the fact that this piece is missing has been very detrimental to building class consciousness. There's this thing that the bourgeoisie didn't need Das Kapital to know how to exploit and extract value from the working class. But the working class needed to understand how it worked, needed Das Kapital to understand what the problem was in terms of exploitation of, your labor, turning your labor into dead labor and all the rest of it, and making a profit out of it. But on the psychological side, we've never had the theory that's, rooted in material interactions, that sees the emergence of language, complex cognition, meaning, human consciousness, individual and collective identities as a dialectical emergence from those interactions, and to understand how the structures of those, right? And that's one of the ways in which the bourgeoisie has effed us over for the past 120 years. You know, they read Gustave Le Bon's The Psychology of Crowds, which is the first kind of mass manipulation manual, and then they ran with it because they don't need to have a theory to do it in the same way as they didn't need a theory of capital. So they've been waging this narrative warfare, this psychological warfare on us, on class consciousness since forever. And we've been missing the theory. And I know many people have tried to do it from, you know, integrating psychoanalysis and other approaches, but I actually don't think that works for very serious theoretical and empirical reasons. And now with this new approach, there is, I believe, the missing link. And what it tells us about the emergence of individual and collective identities is that you have, if you like, a dialectical contradiction when human consciousness emerges and identity. So who I am to myself and who I am in relation to others, those are the two poles around which our identities, if you like, cohere, a little bit like in a dynamic system where you have attractors, right? So those two attractors, they can work on two different structures. One is one that prescribes less fundamental human worth than others, or more fundamental human worth than others. And of course, the less fundamental human worth than others make the bread and butter of a clinical psychologist like myself. You know, people come and they've picked up from their history a basic, fundamental, essential identity that somehow tells them they are less worthy. I don't mean less able, you know, I don't mean like in terms of outcome, but less fundamentally worthy as humans as others. And of course, those who have picked up an identity in which they are more fundamentally worthy as others, we never see in the clinic. We only see their victims. And, you know, they become CEOs and they become Zionists and they become Nazis and they become supremacists and they become... And the other pole of that inner contradiction is equality of basic human worth. And that contradiction is integral to how we become humans. We become humans by relating ourselves as being the same as this person or the persons we see, you know, the eyes of. And suddenly it comes a moment where I'm the same as and different as the other person. This is like recognition of common humanity. And note, common humanity is recognized. It is not given, it is not granted, it is not proven, it is not unproven. You either recognize it or you don't. And free identity, if you like, an identity for the free people of the world is one in which is one that is built on this equality of fundamental worth, both at the individual and at the collective level. And now you probably hear the echoes of what's going on with dehumanization on one side. We are more worthy, our civilization is more worthy than them, our skin color, our technology, or whatever the fuck. And on the other side, those of us who have, you know, seen this contradiction close up, even if we are isolated somewhere in the West, and got, no, that's not true. I recognize the humanity of those folks in Gaza. I recognize the humanity of the Qassam fighters. And actually, this is going to be harder for many of our viewers to hear. I also recognize the humanity of the fucking Zionist terror gang members. They just need to be put away for a long time and had to recognize the humanity of others. But they are also humans, because humanity is just recognized. You know what I'm saying? It cannot be denied, because if you deny the humanity of someone else, like if you really believe in the more than or less than identities and fundamental human worth, then it's basically the end of humanity, because whether you're dehumanizing or you're dehumanized, you are excluded from common humanity. And humanity is nothing if not this common thing we recognize in one another's eyes, okay? So that was kind of long, but this is the basic idea. And this is all based, and that's beautiful because as an autistic guy, I like things to be theoretically really clean and clear and consistent. It's based in a 40-year-long program of experimental psychological developmental, experimental developmental psychology lab experiments. And so we know where it comes from, we know how it emerges, and we know it can either be less than or more than, both individual and collective level, or as worthy as, equal, not in terms of abilities or whatever, we're all different, but equal in terms of fundamental humanity, common humanity. And once we see this, then it also tells us how we're going to be able to build class consciousness, right? And there is this piece that's in Los Sordos' Class Struggle, where he talks about Lenin at one point going from talking about the interests of the working class to flipping to the interests of the whole of humanity. And I think, without the theory, that's what he got. And we are seeing it today, those of us on the left, it's stupid to go, oh, working class interest, the working class must lie everywhere. We have to appeal to that fundamental recognition. It's immanent, if you look in somebody else's eyes, of humanity in all of us. And this is, I think, this is the actual psychological meaning of the free people of the world that the resistance is talking to. So yeah, that's the starting point, if you like. Okay.
Appreciate the starting point. One thing I did want to just correct, I don't know, Violin, if this is what was directed at us, but I just want to say, definitely not intending to chastise you for promoting Doctors Against Gaza. And we appreciate the work that they do. I'm not as familiar with it personally, but I trust the folks in the chat who are saying that they do great work. And, I don't think that was our intention in any way.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I actually, I've participated in webinars for Doctors Against Genocide. As I said, you can go to all our videos. There is the link, and they do absolutely amazing work. And I'm really sorry that I said something that made you take it personally. It's my bad, the way I speak. I apologize very deeply. I didn't mean at all to disparage anything you do. And I thought I'd finished, but I'll say it again. If this is what you guys do, keep on doing it. I was just saying what at this particular point made me go from supporting those organizations to giving money directly to Gaza. But I'm sorry that I said it in a way that went more on the less than, more than. You see, those identities are very easy to get trapped into, and sometimes we speak in a way that reinforces them. And maybe that's what I did, in which case I didn't mean that. In terms of fundamental human worth, both decisions are equally as worthy. So my apologies, and thanks, Jeff, for flagging it.
Yeah, no, appreciate all of that. And I think, one thing I would want to say to people is that, whatever you are doing, at least you are doing something, and you are, supporting organizations that are supporting Palestinian. And I know many of the people, I love your cup. I know many people, who, I know many of the people who watch are in organizations. They're struggling in various ways in their community, and I don't want to disparage people for taking the efforts that they are, because I think that's it's all very important, and is a basis for a kind of popular cradle that we must continue to build. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point, and I want to really touch upon it. So once, I think what happens to us when we ground in resistance, what I call ground in resistance, we get to a point where we go, no, I'm done with this. I'm not prepared to live in a world in which those more than, less than identities, fundamental human worth identities, are imposed on me or on others. Fuck this shit. I recognize every other human being and group and community as equally as worthy in terms of fundamental human worth. When you reach that point, when that contradiction for you starts solving on the side of, radical equality of worth, then you do what I call you ground in resistance. And once you do this, you've joined the free and noble people of the world. And now it is our collective duty to nourish the resistance, to nurture it, to water it, to take care of it with all the love, all the kindness, all the support, all the steadfastness, all the determination that we are able to have for ourselves and to impart in others. And then we can start thinking in terms of what psychological warfare about. And first, let me tell you, I believe, and you raise a very important point, we should never, and sometimes our speech will have this effect even if we don't mean to, shame anybody for what they do. Like if you're low income and you're giving 20 cents, I actually think it's a really good thing to do rather than go, no, I only have 20 cents or $1. It's stupid. No, giving that dollar will not just make someone in Gaza or Doctor Against Genocide think, oh my God, this person gave only $1. Nobody's going to think they're just, insulting us. Everybody's going to know that if you took the trouble of giving $1, it probably means they see the meaning behind it. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it, right? And so as you do this, you nourish resistance in others, but you also nourish resistance in yourself because you have identified what you could do from your means and you've done it, right? And I always say there is not, once you ground in resistance, there is not a single thing that you do that is not enough. Like, because I believe speech is action, right? It has functions, it changes things. So even if you only speak positively about Gaza, about resistance, about common humanity around the water cooler, and that's all you are able to do, that is not too small. Like I use this metaphor of the flood, and I think, the strategic brilliance of naming it the Dialectical is not composed of anything other than a multitude of little drops. And we're all little drops, I'm a very small drop. The channel I have with Sasha is a few droplets. Your channel is a few more droplets, but that's not what counts. It's like being consciously as a drop of water part of the flood, flowing towards the flood gives meaning to our lives and also allows us to nourish resistance, which is the basic of fighting correctly, defending this psychological warfare that is being visited upon us, that we are drafted into. We never asked, most of us, to be part of the psychological warfare, but the capitalist imperial logic is to invade everything and turn everything into a commodity that is then wasted. That is the logic of the thing. Every single living thing, every single environment, every single traditional connection between communities and their environment, every single human experience, it will invade to turn into a commodity to be wasted until there is no life left on this planet. If you resist this in any way, you're drafted. So every time we speak, every time we shit post on Twitter, every time we post on Facebook or wherever, every time we speak around the water cooler, we are being drafted in that big psychological warfare that the empire is imposing on us simply because it's this totalizing machine. So it wants every single one of us, every single one of our experiences, of our thoughts, of our desires, of our dreams, everything. And so once we see this, the question is, okay, what are the targets in this particular form of warfare, and how do we resist? And how do we resist successfully?
Oh, appreciate it. I thought you were going to keep going and tell us.
I was just thinking, oh my God, I speak so much. I said, autistic info dump. So
No. It's good. One thing I'll do a quick promo and then we can
Yes, go
jump. So also I added I think 3 of the campaigns. I think I'm missing the final link, Benji, but 3 of the campaigns that Benji sponsors are in the show description. I also added one that I've promoted on here in the past, and I just wanted to quickly highlight that she recently had her Twitter account, basically banned and created a new one, and hopefully that holds for her. But this is Doaa, who we supported at a previous one, and she's down to 33 followers and has this new account. And I will put it in. I put it in the show description. I will also put it in the chat right now. And I think even like just if you are able to, give her a follow and help like retweet and do quote tweets of her campaign. She still has some momentum on her campaign, which is great because she actually, based off of the last fundraiser that we did, it helped her get enough money to be able to get her family into housing, into an apartment. And but that it costs $1,000 a month for her to even continue to pay that rent, which is a crap load of money if you're in Gaza right now. And so she's sharing it with, I think, multiple families. And so anyway, follow that account, and I'll put it in the show description. Oh, I did put it in the show description and the chat. And you will see her chuffed account also in the show description, but also on her Twitter page if you are on Twitter. So appreciate folks doing that. But yeah, go ahead. Oh, do you have something you want to share?
Yeah. This could be helpful. So do you see the
hang
image?
on.
That's not the one.
There we go. Yeah.
Right. So basically, every content that we come across and every content that we produce, if we want to talk about content, everything that we say or write and everything that we hear or read is going to have an impact on 4 potential dimensions, right? So there are 2 camps. There is, let's say, the Empire stormtroopers, they mean to kill life on this planet, to fuck off out of humanity by transhumanism, and then fuck off to Mars to continue whatever as machines. It's the death logic, and it's coming to kill us. This is something, by the way, I'm getting out of your reading group on Ali Kadri. I really got it now. Marx helped us see that, the working class was unfairly robbed of its labor, turned into value for the capitalists, and unfairly exploited. But now the logic of that, I think it's an artificial intelligence that is known as capital, has come to the point that they're not just taking your work away to make profit out of it. They're taking your lives away. They're genociding, they're warring, they are reducing lifespans. So they are coming and they're destroying ecosystems, and they're destroying, traditional link between the land and the people and the culture. And so they are now coming to kill all of us, basically. And this is not such bad news. We know what's at stake. So you have the empire forces on the one side, and you have the resistance on the other. Resistance is an idea. It can never be defeated because of what I presented earlier. There is this dialectical contradiction at the heart of human consciousness between more than and equal as. And if we see that it's a question of fundamental worth, we are going to be attracted towards, okay, well, we're all human. We can just see this in each other's eyes. And so that's why, you have 1/3 of US Jewish people under 18 would sympathize with Hamas, because it springs eternal inside the human psyche. And on the other side, you have those who have subjected their lives to this artificial intelligence that is, the death dealing logic of capital. So you take any piece of content and it can have effects that you see on this matrix. And by the way, I used the beautiful graphics of National Juche on Twitter. I said I had, but I don't know how to contact them. Yeah, they're beautiful little, it does AI animations with cats that replay the resistance feeds. So content, and it's good to think about, say, content you consume, right, or news you hear, will have two effects on your grounding in resistance. It will either nourish resistance psyche, i.e. make you feel, think, and do things from that basis of fundamental psychological resistance. So it goes top left in your matrix, or it will deplete resistance psyche, make you feel, well, basically that resistance is futile. So, to coin a phrase, it either makes you feel that resistance is fertile in some way, or think it is fertile in some way. It can lead us to a possible future, or it makes you feel like resistance is futile. And of course, for the forces of the empire, the Klingons, or whatever you want to call them, they want us to feel and think that resistance is futile. When we do this, it inflates the psyche. Why do I use inflate and not nourish? Because it's a narcissistic system. It's a game of projections, like the Zionists are doing accusations, or they're accusing people of the things they are doing. This is the narcissistic psychological system. So it's all about inflating an image or deflating an image, right? So on the side of the empire, it either inflates their psyche. They feel they are these Nietzschean superhumans who can create right as they, as their might will allow, or they start thinking, oh my God, they are ghosts. We don't know where they want. Our children, even our children, 1/3 of our children are supporting them. And that you can see deflates their projecting of this image as these superhuman, all-powerful beings. So with this matrix, you can start sorting the content you absorb. And it's very interesting because, I've started doing this, and I see a lot of people, like most of the content that comes from you, Jay, makes me feel like nourishes, like resistance is fertile. Like, hey, there is something there. There is something to be explored, something to be felt, something to be thought about, something to be supported. But there are some people on the so-called anti-imperialist sphere. It's exactly the opposite. Every time you listen to them, it's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Like Scott Ritter, if you can call him an anti-imperialist. But even, to name names, Chris Hedges is like this. You consume the content, and then after this, you need the double dose of antidepressants, right? And others. And sometimes our friends go that way also. We start imagining, what fuckery could that be? And what crazy 5D chess? And maybe they will fuck us this way and sideways and that way. And I get the feeling, I get the sentiment, and I also have those thoughts and sentiments. But it's not to be put out in public because it makes us all feel depleted at a time where we have no fucking idea who's winning. We don't know. Materially, we don't know, because if you're part of a material fight, the last thing you want to do is give out all the information as to what your actual resources are, because that would be treason. So we don't know. And until, resistance has said, that's it, we're defeated, we're all going to commit suicide and God welcome us, it's not over. And so this is what I see as our role in psychological warfare. And also, for all of us, when we put something out, and your voice is never too small, when you speak around the water cooler, when you put even if you put one tweet or one Facebook, Instagram post a month out, run it through this matrix. It's not objective in the sense that you only have a sense of maybe yes, maybe no, but it will guide you better than just going, that's atrocious.
Yeah. So I appreciate that a lot. And it's something that I think about quite a bit, right? Because I think that there are like certain risks, right? There's certain things you have to kind of carefully navigate within this, right? Because I think one of them is that you don't want to feed people a false sense of optimism or hope, right? That because I think this can actually also deplete resistance in a certain way, right? Because if you think, oh, we're just winning, or it is inevitable, or, I don't need to actually intervene or do
Yeah.
anything because the resistance has got it and just trust them, right? Then that also can lead to a state of, okay, I'm not going to act. I just know this is going to play out in my own way, and I'm going to watch it on Twitter and YouTube and all of these other things and, cheer my team on. But that's really all I need to do, right? And then on the flip side, I think there's this difficult thing to navigate within, you want to be as sober as possible in your analysis. You want to be able to, um, be honest, like the kind of Cabral, tell no lies, claim
Yes.
no easy victories
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
And it's important to understand when, something bad happens, that we need to acknowledge that it was bad or that it's a
Yes.
setback or those kind of things. And it's very tricky, I think, also given our positionality within empire as well, of like there's certain spaces where our intervention, is useful and can, support the, make resistance more fertile where we are, right? And then there are certain ways that kind of, end up having the opposite effect. And I know what you're talking about. I mean, there's a lot of people who I love and respect, that are even, like you said, on our side, who are very much in a kind of what I think of as a sort of doomer cycle, recently. And I understand it. Like, there's a
Of
lot
course.
of reasons to be
Yes.
very concerned, a lot of reasons to, I mean, the amount of sheer destruction and horror that the imperialists have unleashed, is psychologically debilitating in and of
And
itself, right?
it's meant to be. That's the thing
Yes.
also, right?
Yes, absolutely. But even on the point you were making, like when you look at the historical, revolutions, when you look at, these major shifts in history, they don't happen over usually a 1 to 2 year basis, right? They happen, and I'm not saying that Palestine has been on that timeline either, because obviously there's been resistance before October 7th for 70, plus years and more than that, really. And there's been Zionists and imperialist repression and all of that as well. It's nothing started, on October 7th, but I think that it certainly entered a new phase, right, of what that struggle is between, Palestinian self-determination and a world that's capable of welcoming Palestinian self-determination into its kind of fold, and
Yeah.
the imperialist world system, which relies upon Zionism on a number of levels and is really unwilling at this juncture to let go of it, right? And so that struggle is in an intensified phase, and it's not going to quickly come to some resolution. And we need to. It's also why we need to not be drawn into something like a ceasefire as an end point, as a sigh of relief, or as a sense of ultimate defeat, because it's none of those things,
That's right.
ultimately.
Yeah, you raised so many great points, Jared. Thank you so much. The first one is, again, I'm going to invite our viewers to, I don't know if you can print this matrix or whatever. It's on a Substack. You can probably, or you can draw it somewhere and see if you can use it for a couple of weeks and see what happens. Because one thing is, you mentioned anything that will make you feel that this is a spectator sport. Okay, I can go, and there's all sorts of ways to go to the spectator sport. I'm on the winning team, I've chosen I'm not a great sports person, but whoever, is winning almost every year, this is my team. And Or some people are attached to teams that always lose also, right?
Yeah, well, that would be. I'm the loser fan, and yeah, my friends for the LA Dodgers right now would be the we root for the winner. So yeah.
And amongst those people, of course, you have those who go around, yeah, but they always win, they're the best. And on the other side, yeah, you go, oh, they always lose, and this is how they always lose. If you step back and you go, okay, because grounding in resistance is not a spectator sport, my friend. It's like something you choose from within yourself. You realize that you have been drafted from birth in a system that depends on us living inside those less than, more than identities, personal and collective. And once you realize that's the deal and you refuse it, then the sprat of resistance starts springing inside of you. And the question is, how do you ground it, right? And it's never a spectator sport. The minute you stand in resistance, there will be costs. Like I decided on October the 10th, I would bear whatever costs there would be. I didn't know what they would be, but maybe I lose my license as a clinical psychologist. I don't know what happens. I know it's very little compared to what the cost would be if I were in Gaza or in other places. But there is this point where you go, it might mean losing friendships, which I have, some family ties or whatever. There's a cost, because it has to break through this thing. And we're living in this narcissistic system, right, where the emperor is naked, but everybody pretends that, oh my God, is not, the clothes have never been so wonderful. So the minute you go, no, it's not only naked, it's actually stinking and it's waving their private parts in our faces and doing all sorts of stuff that I refuse because I choose to be equally worthy as a human being. Then you're not a spectator anymore. You realize that you are on the pitch, and the pitch is the whole world and is everything we do because it's a totalizing empire. So everything that makes you feel like it's a spectator sport depletes resistance psyche, right? Anything that makes you feel like I can do something, even if it's just what I say around the water cooler, nourishes resistance. And yes, we need uncompromising analysis, and we need analysis, as Cabral said, we never need to claim easy victories. No victory is going to be easy. We are fighting a death machine, literally, right? And the future of humanity is at stake. Part of this can make you feel like there's no hope. This is what you want to feel. But part of it could make you feel, look, I mean, this is the biggest ever in the history of humanity psychological warfare campaign, narrative messaging campaign. And at the end of it, for the first time ever in the US, you have a majority of people in sympathy for Palestine and Palestinians over the Zionist entity. After 60 years of a non-stop campaign through all their means, Hollywood, television, everything, you name it, universities, everything, to make the basic absolute equivalence between the word Palestinian and the word terrorist. And at the end of this, a majority of people in the most propagandized, deliberately idiotified population in the core in the US, where everybody has been dumbed down to not even read above grade 5 level, which is why, by the way, Trump writes his tweets in that way. A majority are in sympathy with Palestinians. Realize what it means. It means we are winning. It's not an easy victory. It's not going to be easy because they are going to gun even more. They are going to try and make us think it's futile. It's futile even more. It's not an easy victory, but it is a victory in psychological warfare like we have never experienced before. And, I'm old enough, as young people now say, because the empire flips narratives so quickly, right? I'm old enough to remember how difficult it was to get anybody to resonate with Palestine. And 2 months ago, we had a whole country going on general strike for 2 days for Palestine. I don't know if it's ever happened in the history of the workers' movement that people have gone on general strike for something outside of the country. I know in the civil war against the Soviet Union, some dockers in the UK refused to ship weapons to the expeditionary forces of empire trying to crush the Bolshevik revolution, but it was not a general strike, right? And all this with the socialist move in a country run by fascists, with the socialist movement completely depleted, absent in any form from the electoral arena. That is a victory. And now if you hear my speech and you don't feel that this is nourishing resistance, making you feel like resistance is fertile, then I don't know what more I can do.
Were you talking about Italy there?
Yeah, Italy.
Yeah. I just say to folks too, again, like we had a conversation last week, and it didn't get as many views, and I just want to encourage people to watch it because really great to hear from comrades in Italy who, it's two folks that have been organizing in their version of the Palestinian youth movement over in Italy that we had a conversation with their organization. I don't know when, but prior to that, and then also somebody who's in kind of kind of autonomous worker dock collective, essentially, that was very heavily involved in, organizing around, resisting at the ports and getting, those points of infrastructure shut down and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's an inspiring, I found that to be a really,
Yes.
Inspiring conversation that also, and also just the way that they encouraged people too, because there's a way that I think a lot of us look at that in the US or, I don't know how things are in Canada or whatever, and say, gosh, we're so far from being able to achieve something like that, but,
Yeah.
They talk about how, look, like you start with where you are and with the institutions that are around you and the forces that are around you, and you keep having conversations, you build things, because I think also to them, they didn't think that, I remember the first conversation I had with them, we were talking a little bit about organizing with labor, and they were involved in it for sure at that point, but like they also understood the historical, role of labor in the North and how rare it is that labor in the North shows solidarity with folks in the global South in a real material way like that at the point of production or at the, those choke points. And so, I think that there's a lot that's politically possible, but I also recognize too, as people have pointed out in the chat, one person talked about being fired from their job for those water cooler conversations, and also said that they had no regrets, that they were glad for that. And I
God.
think that's the thing too, is that
Bless you, comrade.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I have so much, I wish I had time on this platform to talk to every person who has made that kind of, sacrifice for Gaza, but it's a lot of people. And I think that
would be a great, that would be a great episode or something, inviting people to testify in whatever way and go, because, you mentioned earlier the costs of anti-imperial struggle, anti-colonial struggle are enormous. Even like a minor declining imperialist power like France exacted 6 million victims, human lives, to grant the Algerian people their independence with no real support from the big dogs of imperialism, right? So now you have this kind of hybrid tail come head of the dog, and I don't even think it's wagging anything. I think it's this one beast, Anglo, it's turned into the white empire, as my friend Indike calls it, Anglo-American big dog of imperialism that's Zionist to its core, not because of Jewish conspiracy or whatever, because of bigger dynamics. It's part of it, but bigger dynamics. And the costs are going to be very big. Like, of course, and when we look at those costs, every story that, okay, this is the cost per week, gladly paid. And this is not something you can say for anyone else. I can't tell people in Gaza, yeah, the costs are high, but you should pay them. Of course not. I can only say it for myself. Like the comrade who said, I was fired for my job. I'm like, oh, and says, I don't regret it. I'm like, yes. And because when you do this, you ground in resistance. But you see, going back to the Italian example, it's very interesting because thinking about how we build class consciousness, right? How we build that psychological common sense that carries us over to victory. The Italian example is very interesting because it's all based on common humanity. It's not based on our interests are more important than yours. The interests of my, pension, of my job protection, of my union, and that's also okay. But you see, that's a more than, less than. That's going, no. We are recognizing common humanity, and this is our basic interest. And I think, when we think globally, and for that, I urge people to listen to Ali Kadri's videos. He talks even more than I do. When you look at it as a system, it is bringing to the fore this contradiction between it continuing and humanity being able to be human. And we are all feeling it in some way, whether you're a docker in Genoa, whether you're a Walmart worker in the US, whether you're a member of a First Nation in Canada, whether you're a clinical psychologist in Montreal or whatever, we feel it. We feel it deep down. And to me, that's kind of an answer to, eco-dooming or imperial dooming. Oh my God, they can fuck us over in whatever ways. Because we are seeing now this recognizing common humanity as being the driver of a new form of class consciousness. And when Ali Kadri talks about, okay, let's think about the core as capital and the global majority as labor, well, the class consciousness is built around seeing the global majority as fully human, fully deserving dignity, sovereignty, self-determination. And that to me is super inspiring.
I agree. Yeah. And I mean, and this has always been my debate with certain people, who I understand like the critiques that people have of around, humanism and certainly like the I mean, one, I understand the separation of humanity with the environment, right? And with nature and other animals is a problem for folks sometimes analytically. I think Kadri does a really nice job actually of thinking about that problem of, social being as a part of social nature, and that, these things are really, intimately connected, and you can't really have one without the other. As do obviously a lot of, indigenous thinkers and so on as well. But I also think that the point you're making is one of the things that has always drawn me to the kind of Marxist humanist side of things, in terms of just understanding that Marx also had, and not just Marx, but people who take up that line of thinking, whether it's in the global south or wherever. Cabral is a great example too, that people who that they think about the prospects of a revolutionary humanism, and they also have a critique of the Enlightenment humanism, and this humanism which is really a false humanism, right? It's a
racist humanism. It's a
the kind of liberal humanism, of course, that does exactly, Lacerdo is great on tearing this stuff apart within liberalism and other things, but creating what you're talking about precisely, which is these supremacies or these hierarchies, right, within a discourse that speaks to some form of universality, but actually does not truly mean it, right? And it always rears its ugly head with colonialism and with genocide and with these wars, right? And so, I mean, and I say this, like, I'm fine to have conversations with people who, want to say, hey, let's move beyond the humanism entirely and talk about something else. But I would just say that for me, that's the draw
Yeah.
of that kind of revolutionary humanist tradition, is that it is actually precisely to push back against all of those forms. And to be clear, not every, I mean, even Marx at certain points, you can see stuff within his writing where there's like some hierarchical,
Yes.
kind of thinking going on
course.
sometimes. And
Of
like,
course.
and those are also things you can see interesting evolution with him on over time.
Yeah.
And that's the same for other people in that tradition as well. So it's not to say that, any of us are beyond saying something supremacist or racist at some point, right? It's that
No.
process of trying to always expand it
Yeah.
further and further.
Exactly. We're not beyond. And how could we be? Because we've been socialized into those identities, right? And by bringing them to the surface, by saying, okay, and if you're interested in the actual theory of it, I have a series of videos on Resistance is Fertile Substack. It's called What's Wrong with Western Psychology and How to Fix It, which is a good point to tell you, please go and subscribe. It's free to the Substack. If you pay, we just give money to Gaza, but you won't get anything more than everybody else. Once you get this piece, okay, so it's either more than, less than in terms of fundamental worth, or equal, then you have a sorting tool, which you didn't have before. And you can't take Marx to task for not seeing something that hadn't yet been seen, right? He saw already a lot. And I hate to think, Marxism isn't Marx. Marx, it's like physics is a Newton at the end of the day. He was the first to uncover some dynamics of this thing we call capital, but it didn't stop with him. Then people continued looking at how this thing evolves. And so it's a tradition, it's not this white guy who sometimes said stupid shit and racist stuff or whatever. That's not what we're talking about. But once you see this, you also realize another thing. There was a comment saying animals are people too. Well, there's this same thing going on where you go, me as man, as it used to be called human or whatever, I am superior in fundamental worth to nature. Once you get into that, you also treat nature as something to be exploited with no regard to the interconnection of you and nature. And Kadri is great for this because it talks of social nature. It says, okay, doesn't mean anything, nature. There's always interaction. This we know also from behaviorism. There's always interaction between the organism and the environment. And what the organism does is a function of the environment, but then changes the environment. And you have this constant loop of interaction in a very complex dynamic system. And it's the same between, human societies and groups and their natural environment. And once you get into those identities, man must master nature because blah, blah, blah. I don't know what stupid, Western philosophical idealist nonsense. Then you get to the same problem. So yes, and yes, and because of course animals are important, and at the same time I've been a vegetarian for 40 years or something, but it is useful. But there are these traditions that always resonate with me, like you kill the animal, but you give respect to its soul for giving its life for your survival or something. So there are ways to manage those things, but at some level, sometimes you are going to choose the survival of your group over, other living beings around you. But you can do this in a non-supremacist fashion, the same way as you can fight a national liberation war without going, no, actually, we Palestinians are more human than you, and this is why we're going to exterminate you all, which is kind of the flip that Zionism did, right? Zionism did this very weird flip to Jewish identity where it went, oh, no, it's not that you're inferior and deserving of extermination. It's that you are superior and deserving of conducting extermination, which is just as stupid in a way. But thanks for the comment, because I think it relates also to nature. It's not just, we humans are superior to everything else, because when you go that way, eventually you'll sow the branch on which you're sitting, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I again, I really love, some of Kadri's. I kind of want to, when we had him on, we talked about it a little bit, but I want to kind of revisit that concept with him even more. And Max Isle, I think, really does, some good work on it as well, in like People's Green New Deal, as he's trying to think about like what would it mean to actually think about ecology and the relationship that needs to exist between humans and nature, right, which they're not separate from, which is the point that Mac, or that Kadri makes so well. But that how would we have to actually reconstitute even how, like, things like cities, right, or structures like that, in order to not live in such a way that is so debilitating and extractive of the environment. It's actually quite a complex thing, but it also is a space, I think, for like really amazing imaginative kind of thinking, that not in a kind of utopian idealist way, but to really get into like if we're actually going to take this seriously, then there is a whole lot that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it only can be done through a socialist kind of project, because it has
Of
to be
course.
something that takes into account basically non-exploitation
Mm.
of people and of nature.
And of course, there is today a concrete example of this extent in the world, and it is basically China. You look at China and you look at the outcomes. The outcomes are 800 people taken out of extreme poverty. The outcomes are ever rising lifespans. The outcome are an environment that is getting better all the time. Now you can breathe in all major Chinese cities. The outcome is, the greatest production of renewable energy and means of renewable energy in the history of humanity so far. So we can see, although of course China is still working in a world system and has to work within the constraints of it, and there is much to be criticized about it. But if you look at, it is possible to rethink this if collectively, because the craziness of this is, once we go, okay, and even if you listen to the discourse of China in foreign affairs, they really work from the basis of equality, right? They go, we are all as worthy, and we may all be different. We may have different civilizations. We may have different social natures, to speak in Kadrian terms, if I may, right? But that doesn't mean we're better than you're wrong. Even when you talk about win-win, it sounds a little bit like business talk or whatever, but it actually means, okay, by recognizing that we are fundamentally different but fundamentally equally worthy, we can probably arrange things. And the tragedy of the end of the 20th century, it happened in Chile. I became an anti-imperialist at the age of 10. When I first learned about the coup in Chile, somewhere communists in my family, so they immediately said CIA, and lo and behold, tank is always right before everybody else, so they were right. But in Chile, there was a movement to use cybernetics and computing power to plan. There was something similar going on in the Soviet Union. And today you see in China, all this, artificial intelligence, rather than use it to write your essays or to manipulate information, could be used to compute these very complicated interactions between us as part of social nature and the natural part of our social nature, so as to make sure we do whatever we do to reproduce ourselves in a way that, thinking 7 generations ahead, as in some indigenous traditions, that it can carry on at least 7 generations ahead. So when you bring all those epistemologies in a way together, we have the common knowledge to do it. If we weren't if all our best brains weren't going into trying to devise these crazy financial instruments that are just, bubble blowing bullshit, but we're actually working on how to manage this. It's highly complicated, but it's not beyond the realm of what's possible. I mean, even China, within this death cult or this death dealing system, is able to do quite a lot of this. So to me, that's, again, makes me optimistic, but not in a Pollyannish way, because, the Chinese are not going to come and save us, guys. They show us what can be done in their own way, but, we have to build our own resistance here and make our connections in ways that we can. And one thing that's really, been my bonnet is every single force of repression is beating a line down to the Zionist colony in occupied Palestine to learn how to repress better. What are we waiting for? To beat a line down and learn how to resist that bullshit. I mean, in Gaza, they managed to somehow prove themselves against any kind of infiltration by the most sophisticated, the most highly technological apparatus of surveillance, control, and predictive whatever behavior bullshit that's ever been devised. And yet they knew nothing, and they still don't. I'm sure there's something to be learned from that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, appreciated. I don't know if there's other things you wanted to hit, but I do want to take a minute and shout out some things and connect
Sure.
people. I
Go
mean,
ahead.
one thing for sure, just to start, it would just be, folks, head over to Substack and make sure that you are subscribed to the Resistance is Fertile project. You can, that's meta right there. You can see the screen and a screen of us talking right now, but there's a lot of other great episodes. All of their content is up there. Benji, maybe you could say a little bit too, because you have these kind of 3 different projects or programs that you do.
Okay,
Maybe you could share with folks a little bit about what those are.
I'd love to do that. I want to respond to a comment from Alexander, which is very true. He said, please don't say lifted out of poverty. What does it mean, more than $2 a day? You're absolutely right. What it actually means, from the Chinese perspective, is access to free education, access to a decent roof over your head, access to electricity, access to collective amenities, access to healthcare. So that's really what they mean when they, it's not just they are now at $3, so it's over. No. It's a very deep thing that if you go and look at the Chinese, what they are saying about it, it's a very deep thing. And by the way, I just heard this Chinese guy, he said, so the Chinese Communist Party has 100 million members. It's the biggest communist or political party in the world. And it's very hard to become a member of the Communist Party, and you have to do things for the people. It's not just, it used to be for a while after liberalization, maybe a way to, go ahead, get ahead and get into the corruption cycle, but that's very much a thing of the past, not completely, but largely. And this guy was saying how, I don't know how many 10,000 members of the Communist Party actually lost their lives in that anti-poverty campaign, just going to those remote places, helping people, building stuff. And so it's not just, okay, now you have $2.50, so you're out of the, whatever UN definition of poverty. This is not what it means in practice. So thank you for pointing that out. Thanks very much for asking what we do on Resistance is Fertile. So we have 3 main things that we do. One is Sasha and I, every week now, we try to do a live show on the Sunday night, 6:30 p.m. ET, and is in Australia, so it's Monday morning for him, where we kind of look at what is going on from this psychological perspective that I've sketched out here. And also we take comments, like we're encouraging people to come with their struggles to how to nourish resistance, how to make resistance fertile inside of me and in my communities, and how to not fall into the trap of doomerism, of feeling that resistance is futile. So we do a little bit of that, in addition to just commenting from a psychological perspective on what's going on or whatever shows up for us. And then we have this series called Psych Lib, for Psychology of Liberation, where we invite guests and we have conversations which often go, to the psychological side of things as well. And recently we had the wonderful Susan Abulhawa for 2 hours. And, she's given lots of great interviews, but I think that's one of the most relaxed and fluid that she has given. So if you want to treat yourself, listen to her. You can maybe fast forward to whatever I say, but it was great. And so that's the cyclic thing. And we try very much as we can, we're two white guys at the end of the day, to center global majority voices, to center Palestinian voices, to center global majority voices. We invite now every month the wonderful Indika, who's from Sri Lanka and is one of the most fertile thinkers that there is out there, and he's going to be back again with us this week. So that's a wonderful thing. We've had folks from the amazing Amit Faleh from Good Shepherd Collective, who at 22 is like, I wish I was at 22. He's like such an inspiration,
Same. I love Amit. I've also gotten to see Susan a lot over the years because she lives here in Philadelphia, so she gives a lot of talks here, and she's phenomenal, and that's a great interview. But yeah, thanks. Keep going. Sorry.
And the third track is what I call SciMat, for psychological materialism, and that's really my side project. But I think it will be my last contribution to the world, is to actually, those things I'm talking about, to write them down in a more complete, coherent, detailed kind of book, and because I think it's there. I've not seen anybody make that link before. I think it's there, and it's going to give us, for the first time, a psychology that is not just one new reinterpretation of human psychology, but, as per the 11th thesis of Marx on Feuerbach, that a psychology, the point of which is to change our psychologies and change the world. Not that I think psychology determines everything. There's this constant interaction between, it's praxis between your way of looking at things, your way of doing something about it, which then changes your way of looking at things. And so there's constant interaction between material and that dialectically emerging quality of human consciousness and complex cognition that in turn can impact matter. So I hope, my dream, my crazy ambition is it will give us more practical tools that we can teach simply. You see, this matrix is very simple, to people that they can start using as a tool for liberation, because Marxism in the West in particular has become a kind of, I love Kadri has this expression of house Marxism, so like you're like the house slave or whatever that Malcolm X pointed to, and you just make these big theories, very complicated, and you go to these conferences and you get feted everywhere, but not a word that you say can serve as a tool to not a single person to advance the cause of liberation and the cause of the free and noble people of the world. That's, I want to go exactly the other way. I want everything I do in psychology, in psychological terms, in developing this psychological theory and the link with dialectical materialism, to be a tool that each and every one of us will be able to handle and to use, not just to smash the system, but to build and nurture that, not just spirit of resistance, but that future of equal recognition. And there's something spiritual about it, though. I'm not a believer in anything, but there's something spiritual in just recognizing the humanity in the eyes of a newborn, in the eyes of somebody who's under bombs, in the eyes of somebody who's experiencing their greatest joy or whatever, that we can actually build a society based on that, and the recognition that this is also a constant interaction with our natural environment, that we are not more worthy than nature, we are a part of it, and we can live in harmony with each other, of course, with different identities, communities, nations, and with this beautiful planet that we won't let the fucking Peter Thiel and Elon Musk of the world fuck up for us and turn themselves into machines that fuck off to Mars. Why don't you fuck off to Mars tomorrow? Take all your...
Keep threatening us with a good time. Like, please leave.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Much appreciated, Benji. I definitely hope folks will sign up. Appreciated to the chat for, your engagement, and make sure, of course, to do the basic things and like, share, subscribe wherever you are watching. Make sure you're following Benji's Substack. Well, the Resistance is Fertile Substack. And also I should have done this beforehand. I didn't get the back end stuff data from Lifeline for Gaza, so I don't know how many campaigns that we were able to fund today, but I know it was quite a few, because I saw just the turn at the top of the page of a lot of those campaigns that had not received funding in several weeks, getting donations. I gave to 3 of them. And so, part of the time when people saw me like tuning out a little bit, it wasn't that I was just donating while Benji was talking. But I hope that I will put all the ones I contributed to in the show description, along with the ones that Benji is sponsoring. And of course, Lifeline for Gaza. I mean, one, tweet support, try to get X, Twitter to undo that ban. That's ridiculous. I'm sure that was at the entity's behest. But also, just the website is still there, right?
Yes.
Use the website, share it with people. You can still share the website on social media. They're not able to stop you from doing that. And so get it out to people and encourage other people to give directly to Palestinians in Gaza.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that we weren't able to hear from Mohammed, but I look forward to seeing what I'm sure you'll post it on Resistance is Fertile.
He sent a couple. I'm just saying that he sent a couple of videos. I don't know if very short.
Yeah, if you email them to me, I should be able to play them. Let me see.
Wait.
Yeah.
Can I maybe play them by sharing? Let me see.
You might be able to, because it seems like
So, okay, here. Does that work? Let me see. Also, share system audio. Is that working?
I don't. Oh, there we go. Hang on. All right, let's try.
Okay.
So the situation in Gaza right now is calm inside the yellow line. So since the ceasefire was announced, prices have fallen down to a certain extent. Right now, Israel is significantly restricting the flow of aid, like maybe 20% of what is needed is actually getting in. In addition to cooking gas, which is almost not getting in. People use wood and plastic to cook food, which is horrible. And we're still using wood, by the way, to cook food. Also, Israel is doing demolitions. They're demolishing and destroying Palestinian homes in areas beyond the yellow line, in areas occupied by the Israeli military. So they're they're wiping Gaza out. Even during the ceasefire, they're still demolishing and ethnically cleansing Gaza. There was the 2 incidents in Rafah in which Israel said that 2 Israeli soldiers were killed by Hamas, and used that as pretext to break the ceasefire and launch airstrikes all across Gaza and kill just Palestinians. And also the second incident in which they said an Israeli soldier was killed, and used that as a pretext to kill like 110 Palestinians, men, women, and children. These people are arrogant. They have impunity because of the backing they receive. They don't respect the ceasefire. They have killed like hundreds of Palestinians since the ceasefire went into effect. Also in Lebanon, like they're bombing Lebanon on a daily basis. They're killing people there, even though there was an agreement. But Israel is not an entity that recognizes agreements. It's a terrorist entity. I also want to add to the last video that Israel occupies more than half of the Gaza Strip, and that's almost like 1 million people displaced. Even people inside the yellow line are also displaced, many of them. But someone from Rafah, which doesn't exist anymore, is now in Khan Yunis in the south. And they can't go back to where their home once was, because there's no longer homes, it's just rubble. They systematically demolished it. The whole city was wiped out. Rafah, eastern Khan Yunis, it's wiped out. Eastern Gaza City, they're working on it. Northern Gaza, like Beit Hanun, it's wiped out. And these people, they live in tents. They can't go back to where their homes used to be. They're just living in homes, in tents, displaced. It's unbelievable that the amount of suffering that these people have to endure. It's unbelievable.
Right. So I want to say a couple of things, if I may, about this. Mohammed, by the way, you can find him on Twitter. Let me see if I can find his handle. Is a young man who was a classmate of Abu Bakr, who is a well-known journalist, and he also had Rifat Al-Arir as a professor. He said, I liked him so much that I went to his poetry class, although I hate poetry. And Muhammad, just after 2 years of genocide and not speaking, accelerating genocide and extermination, contacted us at Resistance is Fertile privately because he wanted to speak out. And what he says is the true reality. There are no easy victories. We are not here to say everything is perfect. No, but to realize that given that he chose to speak out, and everybody knows what speaking out publicly means when you're from Gaza. This young guy, 22 years old, decided 2 years into this that he would speak out in public. And this is how the spirit of resistance can never be extinguished, how it, sprouts through the rubble and blooms. And the quality of analysis, they get it, they know exactly what it's about and what's going on. And so to me, it's so inspiring. And I'm so happy that we could have him say a few words. I sent his Twitter handle in the private chat if you
Yeah.
want to share it.
Yeah, I got it. I will follow, and I will also share it on our screen here. No, I appreciate it so much, being able to hear from him. And yeah, this is his Twitter account here. I'll also drop it in the chat right now so people.
So Twitter access is really difficult. So he has. I don't think he's been as active on Twitter as he had. But anyway, just follow him there. It's always nice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, again, appreciated. This was really good, Benji. I think you give us a lot today, and I think it's a good indication for folks who are less familiar with your work of the kind of work that you're doing on Resistance is Fertile. And so I encourage people to follow, to support, to sign the petition, do all of the things. And yeah, again, in the show description, I'll add any links to funds that I gave to during this, in case anybody wants to match or also support those families. But there's a bunch of folks that will be in the show description that you can chat. And yeah, thank you so much for this, Benji. It's been great.
Thank you, Jay. Looking forward to future conversations and building that anti-imperialist content creator resistant front, or whatever it turns out to be. And as always, free Palestine.
Free Palestine.